times that the El Royale is a new film from writer and director Drew Goddard. He's been involved with some other projects before, like The Martian, Cloverfield, and The Cabin in the Woods, which he also directed. And in this film, we follow 7 people that wind up at this hotel called the El Royale, which rests on the border of California and Nevada. And you soon realize that all of these characters have something going on with their own lives, and their stories start to coincide with each other, and things kind of just propel to even worse as the night goes on. That's all I can really say without spoiling it. This is one of those films that you really just kind of have to go in as blind as possible. I've been a fan of Drew Goddard for a while now. I like Cloverfield and I really like The Martian, and I really enjoy his directing work on The Cabin in the Woods. I think that's a really great horror satire and also just a great movie in general. So of course I was really excited to find out that he had a new film coming out. The trailers made it look fantastic. It looked like my kind of movie, you know? Hearing the title, seeing what it was about, it just looked like it was going to appeal directly to me. And walking out of this film, I was ecstatic. I love this film a lot. This movie just proves to me once again why I'm just so admirable of Drew Goddard's work. The screenplay in this film is honestly one of my favorites of the entire year. There's a lot of films where I walk out of and I feel just so inspired by them. I call them screenplay goals. This movie to me is screenplay goals. As an aspiring writer and director, this film just fits everything that I love about movies. Because this movie starts off with a scene that immediately gets you hooked. Just this one still shot, and the cinematography is great, and you see stuff going on, and it immediately dragged me into it. I was like, okay, now I'm fully invested. I want to know what else is going to happen. And then the movie takes its time and introduces some of the characters, and you're like, alright, I want to know more about these people. As soon as one thing is revealed, then more things get revealed later on, and all of a sudden these characters aren't who they seemed. It's just really well written on Drew Goddard's part, and I think there are so many fantastic characters in this film. But what's so great about those characters is that not only the performances, which I'll get to later, but also how Drew Goddard handled them, because there is a lot going on here. It's easy to just have them all feel messy and jumbled. What I like about this movie is that everyone has their own story going on, but not all of them really meet the requirements of the other story. So there might be one story that kind of ends because another story was going on and they met, unfortunately. The best way that I can describe that. And I really love that. It's like one of those great subverting of expectations where you are thinking for a bit like, okay, now that they've done this, this is going to go on throughout and then maybe this will happen later. But then Drew Goddard writes in, actually, no. And then you're left thinking throughout the rest of the film like, okay, but like this other thing's gonna still happen, right? Like, not really. This movie doesn't do things that typical movies do, and that's why I really appreciate the screenplay so much. I really appreciate also how they connect the storylines together at points. At times they'll have to flash back to show you the story from a different character's perspective, and then they'll do it again. It's just really well edited. I've seen a lot of people compare it to the likes of like a Tarantino-style film, and it is a little bit like that, but I think Drew Goddard really did add a lot of his own personal flavor to it, and that's what makes it so great to me. All the stories just combined to form this really great, intriguing, riveting one that can be really thrilling and can be really fun, can be funny, but then can be really dramatic at the same time. It can make you feel so many things, and I love that. At one point I was just having a really fun ride, and then another point I was really feeling for another character on screen, and the movie just rides with those emotions, and I love that I felt so much throughout this film. And I also love that even though this movie is 2 hours and 20 minutes, there's really no point where I felt like it dragged, and there's really no point where I thought, well, you can cut this part of the story out. Like, no, everything about this movie's story just feels so needed. It needs to be here, and I never really felt like I was bored at all. I felt really drawn to the screen the entire time. As I mentioned earlier, the performances here are extremely captivating. Jeff Bridges is fantastic here as this priest who winds up here who you wouldn't expect to be at a place like this, and he had a really great story too. I'm trying to not delve into as much details about these characters as possible because, as I said, it's best to go in knowing as little as possible, but he has a really great reason to be here. He has a really interesting story. Also, Cynthia Erivo, this is almost pretty much her film. Like, she has a lot of great standout moments in this film. And she's also just one of those characters that you can really feel for throughout the course of the film. I guess you could say she's the most human out of everyone here. She has several standout scenes, like there's a couple points where she sings, and she's got a great voice, but it also adds a little bit to the scene you're watching too. Dakota Johnson, I know I've talked badly about her with the 50 Shades movies, but she actually delivered a really good performance here. I always knew that she was a good actress. I liked her in Black Mass, and even How to Be Single, like she's not bad in that at all. I think that's a bad movie, but I actually liked her in that, and this is, I think, her best performance that I've seen from her so far. Just goes to show you that you can be in a pile of crap and be bad in it, but then go on to do a really great performance and be in a really great film. Kind of similar to Callie Spenny, who was previously in Pacific Rim Uprising. Not a fan of that at all, but in this one, she was really interesting. She plays a really interesting part here, and it just made the movie even more better. And this movie also, I guess I should point this out now, this movie doesn't always tell you everything. It doesn't always spell everything out. There's a lot open for you to kind of interpret on your own. And I really loved that too, because it didn't give me storylines where I felt like, wait, you should have resolved that, or I'm really confused as to what was going on here. I can see some people feeling that way, but really, all you really have to do is just kind of think about it for a second and be like, yeah, like, judging by what they showed, you can kind of infer that this other stuff is going on as well. That's another credit to Drew Goddard as a writer, being able to wrangle all these people together. John Hamm has a really good part here as well. I really enjoyed his presence. Lewis Pullman was fantastic. He starts off as this character that you wouldn't think would steal the show eventually, but later on he really does. He really goes for it. He's a really great actor. I hope to see him in more stuff. And Chris Hemsworth, my God, what a man. What a man he is. He's so good here. He has such a fascinating role. There's one point where he's just really preaching at a group of people, and it's such an interesting mind. He has such an interesting mind, this character, and you kind of just want to hear more about him. You want to hear him talk a little bit more to see if you can get more insight on him. And there's also some other points in the film where he just keeps on going, and his dialogue is just so great, and he delivers it so well. The score by Michael Giacchino is really great. It really fits the tone of the film, and the aesthetic, the 80s aesthetic, looks really good. The hotel itself is just really well designed and really well thought out. It's a place that you feel like you could actually go to, and you might actually enjoy being at, aside from all the criminal activities going on. This is just one of those films where everything worked for me. The score, the acting, the directing, the writing, the suspense, some levity moments as well. Like, everything really worked here. There's a couple unique surprises that happen in this film that for a while you might be thinking like, oh, is this happening now? But then you're like, oh, okay, you surprised me again. Once again, subverting expectations, but in a good way. Not in a way that makes you feel pissed off or anything, but in a good way that actually adds more to the characters and adds more to the story. Overall, I can't praise this film enough. Drew Goddard, I think, made a fantastic crime mystery thriller. I think the performances are all fantastic here. I think they all worked well together, and I feel like the way they combined all of these character stories was so great. Earlier this year, I walked out of a film called Hereditary, and I felt really inspired by that film. And I've seen a lot of other films that I've loved, even a couple other A+s that I really enjoyed, but walking out of Bad Times at the El Royale, I just felt inspired. As an aspiring filmmaker, writer, I walked out feeling these feelings of, I want to make something like this. I want to make my own story with this kind of vibe. I want to make something, and that really is the highest praise that I can really give a movie, is if I walk out and I feel inspired, which I was. I'm gonna give Bad Times at the El Royale an A+. I might be the only person who will give this film a highest grade, but I really enjoyed this film that much. It was so entertaining and then super riveting. It'll go from something really funny and then something really suspenseful, like a character trying to cover up the sound of someone else so to distract the other person that might be watching. Like, you have to see it. It's so great. It's so well made. It's so well directed. At certain points you'll be thinking, wait, what's going on here? Oh, okay, I see. I'm on your wavelength. But if you've seen Bad Times at the El Royale, leave in the comments below what you thought of it. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.